Welcome, viewers, to Aegelis Interviews, where we talk to everyday people doing extraordinary things. Hats off to our guest today. Let's go. Today, I am happy to introduce to you Daniel L Chapman, who has written a children's book called Can You Find a Four-Leaf Clover? Good evening, Daniel. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us about your book. Beyond the title, what can you tell us about Can You Find a Four-Leaf Clover?
Can you find a four-leaf clover? Really wasn't even supposed to become a book, actually. It was meant to be a poem to, I guess I started off as a poem to myself, but really to my grandfather, because I was missing him very much. And I needed sound advice, and I felt like that was the only place I could look to. Um, so instead of being sad that I didn't have him to look to, in my family, we talk a lot about lessons from your ancestors, and that they leave you little tidbits. And this is another lesson of his that he left behind me um, growing up. He told me that our ancestors are never truly gone. When they they pass on to pass on knowledge. Uh, so I took that as a moment of solace. I was feeling really, really um, down in about 2017. I was in my fifth year of college and for a four-year degree. And I was like, well, this can't be the same gifted and talented brain that I had, in fifth grade. This is not the same kid. What's going on? Like, what's wrong? Um, I ended up going through some things with my wife, which we can get into later. She wasn't my wife at the time. We were just getting into the thick of our relationship, um, and through some honest conversation, she encouraged me to go to therapy um, for myself because I had always wanted to go for myself. I was like, just go. It doesn't have to mean anything for our relationship. It doesn't have to mean anything. Do it for you. Like, just go and see what you can find out. I was like, okay. So I went and I sat down and I told this therapist I sat down with, you're going to sit here and listen while I talk to you. Um, and do not diagnose me with anything because the moment you do, I'm going to go look it up. I research everything. And then I tangented off on the story of my initial diagnosis from high school, which was generalized anxiety and clinical depression. I told her how I disagreed with that diagnosis, and it's what stopped me from going fully into therapy because I didn't agree with her, and if I didn't agree with her, there's no way she could treat me. Um, but she said, very nice lady, just sat and listened to me for months. Uh, and then at the end of those months, so I started therapy in right around my 23rd birthday. Um, that timeline's significant for two reasons. Uh, they don't really consider valid autism diagnosis after 22. Um, in order to apply for certain services that you need a qualifying diagnosis of ASD uh, prior to 22. I received my diagnosis right at the tail end of 22, like right into turning 23. Um, so I started therapy like essentially for my 23rd birthday. Uh, and then I was feeling very good as you do when you start therapy. I'm like, I'm on top of this. I got my mental health in check. I know what's going on. I'm talking to somebody every day. I'm good. I got this. Uh, started going to, started feeling so strengthened that I quit my job. I got into, I started recognizing how uncomfortable I was at my job doing what I was doing, running on two different lines. I was running on a very big food manufacturing plant, which if you ever worked in food manufacturing or any kind of manufacturing, it's loud. Like it's a loud place to be in. Especially with food, you have machines and you have smells, you have all these things flying. But I am used to pressing forward, so I just pushed all of my feelings deep down, I guess, when I started there, and continued to work. Finally feeling on top of myself. I'm empowered now. I'm in therapy. No one can make me feel bad about myself. I know I can stand up for myself now. So I go to my manager and say, hey, this isn't working for me anymore. She gives me an answer that I don't agree with. Again, I told my therapist, do not diagnose me because I'm going to disagree. Inflexible in thought. She gave me an answer that was not to my satisfaction of how I thought we could resolve the issue to where I could still remain an employee there. So I left because I realized we were not a good fit for each other. And then I realized after I left that I needed income to survive still. Uh, so I kind of panicked. And my wife saw that I was panicking. Um, and she was like, okay, here's what you're going to do. And this was, I ended up quitting my job around March, around her birthday, which was probably a great birthday gift for her. And she's like, here's what we're going to do. You know how you always wanted to write a book? I said, oh, okay. I see where you're going with this. So let's just give it a try. You have nothing to do. Like you're just sitting on like home all day. Like you have nothing to lose. And I believe in you. I believe you can do this. It's like, oh, okay, then I'll sit down and try and write a book. Uh, so I sat down and anguished for a little over a month, trying to figure out what I was going to write because I needed to write something that was going to be eye catchy and that was going to sell and be great for the masses. And I wanted to write the next generation's bestseller. Uh, so I couldn't come up with anything. I was like, this, I'm never going to write a book. And this is why I didn't never try, is because it was never going to be what I wanted it to be. So then on April 29th of that year of 2017, my wife, she got home from her long day of work. We spent some time together. And then she told me that she was going to go for a walk because I probably just needed some time to myself and relaxing during the evening. Excuse me. Is that I just needed some time to myself relaxing during the evening because she realizes that I work best during the evening. I'm my most creative during the evening. So since the sun was setting, she's going to take herself for a little walk, work on her personal goals, so I can work on my personal goals. I was like, that's great. Um, Turns out it was exactly what I needed because when she did that, um, I did something that I don't do often, and that is shed tears, like a lot of them. I just broke down. I was so frustrated that I had let it get to that point where I was jobless and where I was struggling in school somehow all of a sudden for some reason. And the thing that I hyper fixated for the majority of at least my life, the back half of my life, relationships, I was failing at greatly. I didn't understand anything. And I was like, what is going on? What This is not the same gifted and talented brain that I had a few years ago. So I did what my grandfather taught me to do, and I bowed my head and prayed. And I said, this is what I said verbatim. God, I just need to have one more conversation with him. I know I'll never get that. I won't get to hear his voice again, but I really need that. And it was really interesting because I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I magically heard my grandfather's voice because that didn't happen. But what did happen was I got a flood of inspiration, like a few moments later, just up walking around. And I was like, well, I started talking to myself. The ruminations came back in full swing. And I started, okay, walking in the library in my brain. And I'm like, well, if he was to show up right now, you're not even prepared for a conversation. What would you say to this man? Like you haven't seen him in so long. Like you miss him. Like what's going on? So I started pulling books from the shelf in my brain, uh, which this probably makes sense to no one. But I essentially feel like my brain is set up like a library on a moving train. Um, mm, so I walked through and tried to go through all of the sections I could to find all of the books that were important to creating conversation with my grandfather. And the only thought I could keep coming back to, because I'm bad at visualization, is a picture of his Bible, which I assumed I was thinking of because I just said a prayer, uh, which in the front of his Bible, he always kept, well, it was a page that had a bunch of four-leaf clovers taped to it. And it was every four-leaf clover that he picked with either me or my cousins or my siblings. And he kept them, he held on to them, um, which I thought was really cool. And I thought it was really cool when I was growing up. That was a sweet gesture. Uh, so I was just like, pop up, I don't know what's going on. And it was the answer was the conversation I needed to have. Well, just a few days earlier than his birthday, on April 29th, prior to his birthday, my therapist sat down to me and said, I want you to consider you might be on the spectrum. I was like, first of all, no, we don't believe in that. No. First, to be on the spectrum, you have to be like a Rain Man type. You have to be, I had all of these preconceptions that the world told me what autism was. And I think I held on to them tighter because I knew growing up. And then that made me realize that I don't think I was the only one who kind of knew growing up. I think my family and those around me knew grow watching me grow up. This kid's a little different. But in my family, luckily, I'll say luckily, they looked at it as regardless of what help will be offered or not, I'm going to look at him as my son. He is the son of my family. And that means whatever that means. That means he's going to have some traits of, crazy Uncle Billy, and he might have some traits of his grandma. But whatever it is, he's uniquely him. And all he needs is guidance. And my grandfather was the beginning of that mindset really being instilled in me. And once I realized that, going through the books, I was like, okay, where's that first memory located with him? That comfort that sits with him. And then I heard his voice as a memory. Can you find a four-leaf clover camouflaged against the grass? And I was like, that was so soothing to me. It was such a simple question. And then I started asking myself more questions. And that's kind of how the book developed. It was a poem written to me ultimately, because that's how I communicate with myself. It's another a poem. I go through my library of my collection of words. I have a vast collection of, it's a big library. And I always thought that this meant I was smart. But what it meant was that I have a library. Uh, so I went through this vast library and started picking out words and putting them on paper, on this imaginary paper in my head, this whiteboard, sentence by sentence, just talking to myself, creating this conversation back to myself of what I would imagine would take place. And what it did was it took me through memories that I needed to relive instead.
So it starts off, it seems kind of, light and fun, and it is light and fun because it's the boy and his grandfather spending time together. And then by the end of it, I was just like, whoa. It was kind of overwhelming, the amount of emotion that had come out suddenly at the end. So I just thought it was a very inspirational book as well. Would you like to close us out with like an excerpt or a quote from the book that you like?
He'd asked me, "Can you catch a fish today, hidden neath the gentle stream? If you teach a man to fish, sure, that man will always eat. I can catch a fish, old man. Just show me how to cast the line. I won't catch a single fish. Instead, I will catch 99. We put the bait right on the hooks. Then in a flash, our lines were in. I used twice the worms on mine. I knew for sure this time I'd win." The old man sitting statuesque, leg folded across his lap. I wiggle my line. Alas, a bite. I pull a soggy old county map. "You can catch a fish, brother." It's my childhood nickname. "Patience, patience, patience now. Sometimes just to make a move, you don't need to make a sound." That stood out to me after I wrote it because it reminded me of how easy it was for him to help coach me through new experiences and dealing with the hard things. And it reminded me how resilient I am on the back end because of it. He didn't traumatize me to make me face new things. He challenged me to challenge myself and come forth when I was ready. So I love fishing with him. I love fishing with him. I'll sit down here and I'll fish with you. You know, I'll bait the line for you if you want. You can bait the line yourself. You don't like touching the worms, that's okay. I challenged you. You want to catch more fish. Now I'm using twice the worms. I'm using more worms. So touching more gross stuff, right? There's a soggy old county mat. That detail stuck out to me. All of the things that I don't like now have embedded themselves in my core memory as okay, and I can deal with them a little bit more. And I realized as I grew up into an adult, that mindset carried with me. So I can do more things. I feel like personally, I feel like I can do more things now because I know that my limits and boundaries can be pushed a little bit.
Yes, it's a great lesson to have learned. And Daniel, we thank you for sharing your time and insight with us. You can pick up Can You Find a Four-Leaf Clover on Amazon.com and Kindle. Currently, the book is free for Kindle Unlimited subscribers, $2.99 for Kindle purchase, and $4.05 on paperback. You can support your favorite authors by clicking their follow button on their author page, leave ratings, and leave a review. Reviews are golden. Please click the like button on this video if you enjoyed the show, and please subscribe if you want to see more. Until next time, blessings be.